Hey guys, I'm John Setzler. Welcome back to Man Cave Meals. Today I'm going to put together a video for you guys to show you how to start your own sourdough starter. I get asked this question a lot when I use my sourdough starter to make bread or pizza crust. So I'm going to show you how to do this. It is a simple process. It takes 7 days. I'm going to show you how to make the starter from scratch and how to maintain it. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is talk about what you need. You need a digital scale. If you don't have a digital scale, making bread and pizza crust and repeating the results consistently each time is going to be very difficult. You need a small mixing bowl. You need a measuring cup. And I like to make my yeast starter in these quart mason jars. Any kind of jar that's a quart or so will work. Any kind of container that's got a lid on it. And I like to rotate between the jars, and you'll see how we do that as we go. So all you need in order to get started is this equipment or something similar, and you need some whole wheat flour and some warm water. So let's have a look at that. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start out with 100 grams of whole wheat flour, and then to that we're going to add 100 grams of water that's at about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're just going to mix that up completely. And once that's completely combined, we're just going to transfer it into our first mason jar. And once it's in the jar, to start with, we're just going to set the lid on there loosely. And we're going to leave it loose for a couple hours, at least 3 or 4 hours. And then we're going to come back and tighten the lid down, and we're going to let this sit for 24 hours. This is day 1 of the process. We'll move on to day 2 tomorrow. Okay, day 2. Our yeast starter that's in the jar, you can't really see that much is going on here. There's not really much happening yet because this takes a little while, but by tomorrow we're going to be able to see what's happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and we're going to put it in this mixing bowl. And in this mixing bowl, I have another 100 grams of water that's about 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to take that yeast starter out, and we're just going to mix it up completely in this new water. And then I'm going to add another 100 grams of whole wheat flour, and we're going to combine that completely. And then we're going to put that back into a clean jar. And here's what we have. We've got more volume in there today, but by tomorrow we're going to be able to see a lot of activity going on here. So I'm going to put the lid on it, and that wraps up day 2. Okay, here we are at day 3, and our yeast starter is going gangbusters. You can see here it almost filled up my jar. So we know that we've got a healthy yeast culture going on here, but we've still got some more work to do. We're going to start day 3 here, and what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to take out about 100 grams of this and put it into my mixing bowl. And to that, I'm going to add 100 grams of water that's about 90 to 95 degrees. And then I'm going to mix that up completely. And to that, I'm going to add another 100 grams of whole wheat flour. And once I have that flour added, I'm just going to mix all that up completely. And then we're going to add that to our clean mason jar. And then I'm just going to set the lid on that loosely. As you saw, we had a lot of activity, and we don't want that to blow the lid off. And if it does, we want it to be able to get out. So you want to set this on a towel. So we'll be back to see you on day 4. Okay, we're still on day 3 here, and it's been about 6 or 7 hours since I fed this thing, and I can tell already that it's going to fill this jar up and blow off. So what I'm going to do on this one, and you may want to do this also, and when you start this project you may want to start it in a larger container than a 1 quart, but I'm going to switch it over to this bowl for today and cover it in plastic and finish out today in this, because when we go to tomorrow we start changing to a smaller volume. So we'll go from there. Okay, so just for a reference, that's what we look like. I've covered that in plastic, and we'll come back and pick up on the day 4 tomorrow. Okay, we're on day 4, and here's where we are on our starter that we moved over to a little larger container, but today we can go back to the regular container. We're not going to have to worry about it going overboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 50 grams of this starter and move it to a clean mixing bowl. and it doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm going to add 100 grams of water that's at about 90 degrees, and then I'm just going to mix that up completely. And then we're going to add 100 grams of whole wheat flour, and then we'll mix that up completely. And then that goes back to a clean quart jar, and we'll just put the lid on that and let it go until tomorrow, where we'll come back for day 5. Okay, here we are at day 5, and we've got our yeast starter in the jar here that's still very active. And what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer 50 grams from the jar into our mixing bowl. And to that, we're going to add 150 grams of water that's at about 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I just like to mix that up completely. And to that, we're going to add, this time we're going to add a mixture. We're going to add 75 grams of whole wheat flour, and then 75 grams of white flour, or just all-purpose flour. And then I'm going to mix that up completely. And then we're going to transfer that to our clean jar. And then we'll just put the lid on that and let that sit for 24 hours until we come back tomorrow. Okay guys, here we are on day 6, and here's our starter. It's looking perfect. You know, it's puffy and gassy. And so what we're going to do now is feed it one more time. We're going to take 50 grams of this and put it into our mixing bowl. And into our mixing bowl with the yeast culture, we're going to add 100 grams of water that's at about 90 degrees. Then we're going to mix that up completely. And then we're going to add 100 grams of all-purpose flour. We've switched completely over to all-purpose flour at this point. No need for the whole wheat flour, and we'll talk about that at the end. And we're going to mix that up completely. And then we're just going to transfer that to our clean jar. And then we'll just toss our lid on that. And you don't have to make it tight, just kind of loose, and we'll be back in 24 hours to finish this up. Okay guys, here we are, day 7. We're finished with this. We're not actually going to feed it again today. This is ready to go into storage, or it's ready to start using. If you're not going to use this right away, you just put it in the refrigerator, and we're going to feed the starter once every 1 to 2 weeks. And in order to do a feeding, what you do is you take this out of the refrigerator, you remove 50 grams of your starter back to a mixing bowl, and then add 100 grams of water, 100 grams of flour, mix it back up, and put it back in a clean jar. You're just going to toss out all the leftover starter that you don't use. You don't save that, but if you do some looking around on the internet, you'll find some interesting things you can do with that starter that you're tossing out. A lot of people cook with that, make pancakes and various other things with that starter. So, like I said, this is ready to go. When it comes time to use the starter, what I like to do is, if I know in advance that I'm going to use this, let's say, for instance, today might be Monday. Let's say I know I want to cook a loaf of bread on Tuesday or Wednesday. I will take this out of the refrigerator. I will do a feeding. I'll take 50 grams, mix it with 100 grams of warm water, 100 grams of flour, and put it back out on the counter in a clean jar. And the prime time to use that is about 12 to 24 hours after you have fed it. So that's a good time to pull from it, and we'll do some recipes using this so you'll know what to do with it once you have it. But I like to feed mine before you start. You don't have to. You can pull this directly from the refrigerator and use it, but I like to have just a more active culture going. So what we've done throughout this process, I'm going to give you a quick rundown. We started with whole wheat flour. The reason we start with whole wheat flour is because the whole wheat flour has more of the natural nutrients in it that you need to get this going. And if you notice, we haven't added any yeast to this. The yeast that's become active here is naturally occurring in the air and in the flour itself. So we're just culturing that yeast that already exists. So this is how you make a yeast starter. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'll be happy to answer any, and we will, in the next month or two, we'll do several recipes using our sourdough starter. We'll probably make a couple loaves of bread, maybe some pizza crust, and a few other things. So Until next time, this is John Setzler with Man Cave Meals.